All right, so let me hide the floating things. There we go. So we are going to talk about the truth about carbohydrates. So we're wrapping around. We're going to go back and refer to, I'm going to be going back and referring to some of the stuff we've learned since beginning the term. But not just carbohydrates. We're talking about carbohydrate metabolism today. And so my question for you is, do you remember what the 4 steps of catabolism are? Well, that was, we start with digestion at the top. So we can start with fats, carbs, or proteins. And then what we're going to be talking about today is that second step, the beta oxidation, glycolysis, and amino acids. So no matter what you start with, they come down to an acetyl group. Coenzyme A is the carrier, so there's our 2 carbon groups, so acetate or acetyl. Acetyl, the YL, just is what we call it when it's attached to something. And the common steps is here, the Krebs cycle, which goes around, and no matter what you eat, goes into the Krebs cycle, which then goes into the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. These last 2 are, they can't happen without each other. And so my question is, why are these 2 steps common to any food you eat? And there are 2 answers that I can think of. One is efficiency. It's extremely efficient because we use the same enzymes at that point. So in the step above, the beta oxidation, glycolysis, amino acid catabolism step, those are all using different enzymes. So now once we get into the Krebs cycle, it's the same enzymes. We streamlined it. Everybody's doing it the same way. And the other reason, for better or for worse, you can eat anything and it will feed into this. It funnels into that. Really, you can't eat anything. You want to eat healthy. All right, this is just a summary, and don't worry about the slide. It's just to help remind me. We're going to walk through carbohydrates first, breaking them down. The key point of this slide, here's the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, goes into electron transport. That's where we're making our ATPs. But if you notice, they all feed into that, whether you're doing proteins, carbs, or fats, and they all also feed into each other. There's, but look, they don't all just end at the ETC. There's an arrow going back this way. We get storage, so we can store things as glycogen a little bit, but everything can move up here to fats and lipids. And that's the problem we're seeing in this day and age, is everything ends up here when you have more than you need. All right. So glucose, we're going to first focus on glucose. Your body is meant to run on glucose. However, when you eat glucose, it doesn't mean it's going to go straight down to the Krebs cycle and you get ATP. There are 4 possible things that could happen to the glucose. First one, glycolysis. And then I have slides walking through each of these, but I have a brief sentence describing each one. So glycolysis is when we make ATP energy. Your body, your cells need energy. This is always going to be happening. It's just if you get to a point where you need it a lot. That's what this picture at the bottom right is trying to show, that the mitochondria. So that's our picture of the mitochondria. So glucose comes in and glycolysis, and it's going to send it into this place. All right. Lysis means to break down. So anytime we see a word ending with lysis, that means we're breaking it down. That is catabolism. A second possible thing that can happen to glucose, and this is also always happening in all your cells, is referred to as the PPP for short, and that stands for the pentose phosphate path. Pentose, that's ribose. And so whenever our cells need ribose, which is all the time, ribose is, we're always making RNAs to make protein. When this happens predominantly, when your body, your cell says, we got to go this way, and it pretty much the other ones become second in line, is when the cell replicates. Because when it replicates, you have to replicate the DNA. And the DNA is 3 billion base pairs, so you're going to suddenly need 6 billion riboses for that cell. And so they kind of become, okay, we need 6 billion. That takes some time. So it goes to that. The other point is pentose is also always needed for those coenzymes. NAD, FAD are coenzymes that carry the electrons. There is another one that I didn't mention. It is called NADPH. And NADPH is specifically needed to make lipids. And so when your cells are going to store things as lipids, they also need the pentose phosphate path. Right. Number 3 fate is glycogenesis. And glycogenesis is storage. So genesis is synthesis or storage. And so we're storing glycogen. So we see the word glycogen, and then this is like a double dip. And then they use the genie again. Genesis means to build. This is anabolic. This is how our body stores glucose. And this only happens in 2 places in your body, your liver and your muscles. So your muscles keep the glucose stored for themselves. It never leaves the muscle once it's in there. Your liver shares. Your liver's amazing. And the 4th possibility is lipids. So lipogenesis means we're going to store lipids. So those are your triglycerides and cholesterol, so fats and cholesterol. And so when are you going to do glycogenesis versus lipogenesis? Oh, well, storage. Your body, your liver, can only store a certain amount of glycogen. And once it hits that number, there's a maximum capacity of glycogen. It stops storing glycogen, and all the rest gets changed to lipids. So it could just be you just ate way too much because you went to an all-you-can-eat buffet because you finally got out of your isolation quarantine and you went crazy. It could just be you're eating crap. And so fast digestion. So fast food is called fast food, not because it's prepared fast, but because it gets, well, not only, but it gets digested fast. There's no fiber in it. And so it goes to your liver, and your liver goes, whoa, we better start storing this, storing that. And really there wasn't as much as it thought. All right. So glycolysis. It's a breakdown. So trying to simplify the slide, don't let it overwhelm you. It is the breakdown of glucose to 2 pyruvates. Pyruvates are 3 carbons. Glucose that we started with is 6 carbons. So basically we cut the 6 carbons into 2 3 carbons. All right. We're going to see a couple other things that happen here. Overall, we do an investment at the beginning where we invest ATPs, and then we cut in half, and then we start getting our reward. We start getting ATPs, just a few, and some NADHs. Some things that are really cool is, yes, there is a point here where we make fructose. So if fructose comes in through your diet, it could enter here, assuming it came from a healthy source of fructose, like fruit and honey. Now, what that is showing, the ball and chain, is the very first step. Step 1 is the step you do need to know. This investment step is more than an investment. What happens at the very moment glucose enters the cell. So glucose can't cross the cell membrane. Cell membranes, remember, are nonpolar. They're hydrophobic. Oh, and look at that glucose molecule up there. Look at all those OHs. It loves water. It's hydrophilic. It's very loving. It has to take a boat across. So it's passive transport. It gets in its boat, gets carried across, and as soon as it gets off in the cell, it gets this put on it. It can't leave the cell anymore, and that is a phosphate. And that is the purpose of this first step, which is shown here also. So the ball and chain is the first step. Glucose enters the cell, and immediately, and actually for all those possible fates of glucose, this is the first step. And so then it can go, because it has to, what it does is it traps the glucose in that cell. And now that cell has the glucose, because once it has this phosphate group on it, the phosphate group doesn't allow it to cross the cell membrane. So it can't fit back in the boat. It now has that ball and chain on it. So it can't get back in the boat and leave, because that boat was free. It's going back and forth all the time. So that phosphate immediately gets put on and can't leave the cell. There is only one cell type in your body that can remove the phosphate, and that is your liver. Your liver in Chinese medicine, they knew it was the organ of gratitude. They actually call it that. All right, you do not need to know these steps. You don't need to memorize this, but this is just showing you we go glucose, we put a phosphate on, then we change it to fructose. So it's an isomer. And then we cut it in half, and then we get the payback. So when I talk about this, right, it's the 8th, 9th week, everybody's eyes look, and yes, this slide is in a different language. Oh, but look, molecules are drawn the same in different languages. So I can actually read the slide. I'm not sure what language it's in. The key is we invest at the beginning here with the ATP, and then we get reward back. So we're going to talk about that. The overall, what you need is this. Write this down in your notes. You start with 1 glucose, glycolysis, and you end up with 2 pyruvates, 2 NADHs, and 2 ATPs. Down here, it's showing everything twice. And that is, and actually it stops here. This is pyruvate, so let's ignore the step for a moment. Because at this point, pyruvate can go 4 different places. And so it's a misrepresentation that you're taught that it only goes here and goes into the Krebs cycle. That's not true, because at this point, once you get to pyruvate, there's 4 possibilities of what can happen. The NADHs, well, what's going to happen to them? NADHs, what do? They transport electrons to the ETC. Oh, but there's a catch. This process on this page is not in the mitochondria. It is in the cytosol. The cytosol means it's in the cell, but we're not in anything. We're not in the nucleus, we're not in the ribosomes, we're not in the endoplasmic reticulum, we're not in the mitochondria yet. So those 2 NADHs have to get to the mitochondria so they can do their thing. The 2 ATPs, they're energy. You can use them. So you invest 2 and you get 4 out, so they just say you get 2 net. That first step is the ball and chain. I'm going to mention fructolysis. So as I showed, you can't read it, but this is fructose. And so fructose can actually enter this and be a source of energy. And that's what fructolysis is, or fructolysis. I mention this because your extra credit 3, you get to listen to a YouTube interview, and he does mention fructolysis. And so he mentions a lot of stuff that I've talked about this term. So it's the fructose energetic pathway to pyruvate, and it only happens in your liver. So where glycolysis happens in every cell in your body, this one actually only your liver can break down, can have fructose enter at that 3rd step. And from honey, your body can do it, and it actually won't go through this process. It actually goes, hey, let's go just make it into glucose and store it. Okay. Oh, but what if you get it from high fructose corn syrup? Your body doesn't know what it is. Can't emphasize enough. Got to be an energetic footprint, and it just immediately gets stored as fat. You can't use it as energy. It gets stored as fat. You're eating out fast food. It is loaded with high fructose corn syrup, the soda, the burgers. They're just loading everything with high fructose corn syrup, everything. All right. Nobody's picked that as a topic, so if you don't like your topic, that one's a fun one. So pyruvate, so glucose got broke down to pyruvate. That was glycolysis. There are 4 possible things that can happen to pyruvate. And let's look at them. One is aerobic respiration. And I'm going to go through a slide for each of these. Aerobic means oxygen. So that's the Krebs cycle and ETC. The opposite choice is anaerobic. So aerobic means oxygen, anaerobic means no oxygen. These pictures are crazy to me because I have the hardest time with them too, but I have it on there. And in the background are the 3 fates. So that's from Greek mythology. But lipogenesis, so we can store pyruvate as lipids. Of course, that's going to happen when we have excess of any calories. Oh, and a new word, gluco, that's a U, not a Y, gluconeogenesis. So the last 2 are genesis. So we're going to build something. C is specifically storage. D is not storage. It is making glucose. And I'm going to have a slide on it, so we'll see it there. Gluconeogenesis and lipogenesis only happen in the liver. Only place they can happen. And that's the fates. So, yeah. Aerobic respiration, we already did this. This is the citric acid cycle in the middle and electron transport chain oxidative phosphorylation. Oh, there's that funky word, chemiosmosis. That's the hydrogen gradient, also known as the pH gradient. And this is just specifically being glucose-centric because we really are. We're supposed to have carbohydrates. Glucose gets changed to pyruvate, and one of the possibilities is to go this way. Remember, there were some ATPs made here. Actually, not many, only 2. But we do get some NADHs, and great. This here is in the cytosol. We're in the cell. Here, we're finally in the mitochondria. That's what they're trying to show. Citric acid cycle, what we did in the last talk, citric acid cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, electron transport chain, that is aerobic respiration. It is aerobic because you need oxygen. Without oxygen, it cannot happen. It stops. And the reason it stops is because you start making all these NADHs and FADH2s there, and they have nowhere to go, and they shut it down. Kind of like what's happened to us. This is just showing you we're going to end up making ATPs. I'm going to have a video clip in here, and we'll do a little bit of the ATPs. We're making the ATPs. The vast majority are here. This is oxidative phosphorylation, when we make ATPs connected to the electron transport chain. Up here, we do make 2 ATPs from glycolysis, and we also make every time you go through the Krebs cycle, you make 1 ATP. Since there's 2 pyruvates, it goes through twice, so that's why they have 2 ATPs. These ATPs at the top are substrate level phosphorylation, so they are made without the ETC. All right, anaerobic means no oxygen. So anaerobic is a lot of bacteria doing their aerobics. So a lot of bacteria can live without oxygen, or you and I when we do some serious exercising. And yeah, however it is that you like to exercise. All right. What happens in anaerobic, it's one step. You end up with lactic acid. So you've all learned about that in your PE classes and health classes. You build up a lactic acid, and that's the burn you feel is the lactic acid because it's an acid. Oh, but they have a mistake, don't they? Because there's no acids. They're always ionized in your body. It is actually truly lactate. So my slides will say lactate. This is happening outside the mitochondria. The pyruvate was outside the mitochondria. If there's oxygen, it can enter the mitochondria because that's where oxygen gets the electrons. So why would we make this? Lactic acid does create acidosis. So if you keep exercising, so why do we have anaerobic? Well, anaerobic means you can't go this way. You can't go because there's no oxygen. That's why my red X is there. So glycolysis happens and we make pyruvate, but something else has happened, and that's here. My slides got rearranged. I'm circling the NADH, and the NADH is the culprit. The NADH blocks glycolysis. Remember feedback regulation? The NADH blocks glycolysis. So this was blocked over here, over on the left, my first red X. So we get no ATPs over here, they're blocked. And now we just blocked our only source of ATPs. So you're just sitting there. Your cell can't do anything because without ATPs, none of the other, nothing. The synthesis, so glycogenesis and lipogenesis, they need energy to build the molecules. Everything you're doing in your body needs some kind of triphosphate to your muscles moving. So we suddenly block this. Oh, but wait, this is anaerobic down here. It takes the NADH and it's one step. It removes the hydrogen and it returns it back to NAD. And this is no longer blocked. And that is the beauty of anaerobic. Gluconeo is, so again, anaerobic is specifically to remove the NADH, to reoxidize it, to pull off so that it loses that electron that it was going to carry to the mitochondria. It is, right, and in that process, so the only difference between pyruvate and lactate is those hydrogens, those 2 electrons. So lactate is missing the 2 electrons. The lactate actually, something happens to it. And one of the things is the lactate, I think I have the picture here, the lactate that is built up in your muscles when you're exercising and heavy exercise, so you don't have oxygen, that lactate then leaves your muscles, it travels through the blood because it's very hydrophilic, and it goes to your liver. So that purple thing there, that is your liver. And the lactate then, by your liver, only by your liver, changes it back to pyruvate. It can do the reverse step. And then the pyruvate goes through gluconeogenesis. So this whole thing is gluconeogenesis to make more glucose that the liver then gratefully and graciously shares. This is kind of, you know, it's a cycle. And it was Dr. Corey's who figured it out. Gluconeogenesis, I'm going to go back for a step there. I don't know what the 24-hour thing was. I took this slide from something, but gluconeogenesis is making glucose from non-carbohydrates. So you're not getting it in your food. So I think they're saying if you don't eat for a certain maybe 24 hours, your body's going to have to start making glucose somehow else. These are your choices. You can make it from glycerol, propionate, pyruvate, amino acids, lactate, and you make glucose because your body needs glucose. And if you're not eating any food, there's no food coming in. My understanding is it's about 48 hours, probably 24 in normal situations. But if you're truly like fasting and not doing a lot, you have about a 2-day supply of glycogen, of glucose, and then you run out and your body goes into gluconeogenesis. All right. It happens only in the liver. And lipogenesis, also only in the liver. These are kind of weird diagrams, but they were the best I could do because usually I'm drawing on the chalkboard. This happens when there's just too much. So this is a beautiful picture. It shows the glucose goes through glycolysis. It breaks down to the pyruvate. It breaks down to, and then we have no need for energy because we're not doing anything. We're eating and not doing anything. We're eating and not doing anything. So all the stuff, all those pyruvates get changed into lipids. Insulin actually promotes that. And yeah, so insulin, interesting, right? Because we're all like, oh, I need insulin. Oh, my mom needs insulin. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Insulin promotes you to store fats. Does your doctor tell you that? All right, so speaking of insulin, good segue, 4 hormones and glucose. So there are 4 hormones that are primarily responsible for glucose. And you're all going, no, there's not. There's 1. There's insulin. Oh, there's actually 4. Insulin, of course, is a big one. It is the key that says, hey, hello. Insulin's the key that's going to let glucose in. We're going to talk about this. Glucagon is its counterpart. So when you have high blood glucose, your body releases insulin and it says, take the glucose, do something with this. So that's what this picture is trying to show, is the glucose going in the cell. And yeah, Glucagon is when you have low blood glucose. So insulin's released when you eat, taken, and glucagon is released when the sugar is gone. All right, so I'm going to talk to you for about 20 minutes about this, or Tigger's going to talk to you.
We're back. All right, we're going to talk about the 4 hormones and glucose. So this is simplifying it because we're at a very introductory level. There's probably more than 4. But these are the 4 your book talks about. Your book actually does a really nice job. All right, the first one, of course, is insulin, which insulin, whenever you have high blood glucose, is when it gets released. So when are you going to have high blood glucose? When you eat, especially when you eat crappy food. All right, insulin is the dinner bell. So insulin is the dinner bell. Does anybody remember what type of hormone it was? It was a polypeptide. It's a small one, 51 amino acids. And all your cells have receptors for it, and it binds to the cells, the receptor, and it says, food is here. Prepare yourself. And so your cells must use, the cells are going to take in glucose and use it somehow. So what are some of the ways we can use glucose? Well, we're going to store it. That's what insulin's saying. It says store. Let's store it. So the Genesis ones, glycogenesis. This is the one I was saying can be a little confusing because they reuse the gen twice. So the first half, well, it gives us that colors, is glycogen. And then the second half is Genesis. So storing glucose as glycogen. So storing as glycogen. This again only happens 2 places in your body, and that is, if nothing else you get from this whole lecture, your liver is freaking important. Be so kind. Send gratitude. You guys should be doing your gratitude. Just do if you're doing the gratitude journal, and even if you're not, do gratitude right now for your liver. Your liver is on the right side, and it's under your rib cage, and it is doing everything. In Chinese medicine, it has like the seat of most importance. It's like the emperor, and they knew all this. How'd they know? And they give it, it's the color green. It's associated with springtime and plants and stuff. That's why you might see me sometime in the gorge up in a tree doing a meditation. That's because I'm doing something for my liver. That happened once. I found this awesome tree and I climbed up it, and one of my students drove by. But so if it ever happens to you, you can say, oh, that must be my chemistry teacher, and probably is me. I probably won't be dressed as Tigger though, so you might not recognize me. But anyway, just say thank you, liver. Thank you for all you do. All right. It also happens in your muscles. The thing is, your muscles, as Tigger would say, Tigger would call them muscles, is they're greedy. The glycogen will never leave your muscles. The glycogen is how you store glucose, is these million glucoses stored. And then when your muscles need it, it's right there. Your liver is going to always release the glucose to keep everything for all the rest of the body. It's the only cell that can take that phosphate off. So remember, as soon as the glucose goes in, remember the ball and chain, we add a phosphate and it's stuck in the cell. So every other cell in your body, it gets stuck in, including your heart. Your heart's pretty dang special. It's like everything with the whole human experiences. Your liver is the only place that you can remove this phosphate and release the glucose out. Otherwise, it has come from your diet. All right, so that's one thing. Oh, we have other types of synthesis. It also is going to do lipogenesis. So lipid storage. So this means, sorry, let's do a different color. And this is also liver only. Liver, this one truly is liver only. So this is your triglycerides, so fats, because we're animals, and cholesterol. Everything gets broken down to that 2-carbon group, and if you have nowhere for it to go, it gets stored as a lipid. So then we build it back up. That's why fatty acids were always even numbers, because you just put the 2 carbons together, and cholesterol is an even number. There's a specific way it puts them all together. When you eat too much at one time, you may have not eaten like too many calories, but you ate a lot at one time. Oh, or you didn't eat a lot at one time, you just didn't eat any fiber. You didn't eat those legumes or the fruit. So you didn't get fiber. And vegetables, absolutely vegetables. And so everything gets absorbed really fast, including those like power bars and stuff. The fiber, yeah, you get some fiber, but the fiber isn't bound like it is by Mother Nature, where it grew up like that. All right, eat whole food, please. If you got nothing else from these, well, 8 weeks so far, but 10 weeks, eat real food. Those power bars, those protein bars, they're processed. So your body's going to absorb them fast, and your liver goes, whoa, we got all this stuff coming in. And it's like when you go to, remember those days when you used to go to the movie theater, and there's a long line here, and you're like, let's go over there. There's not as long as a line. And so you go somewhere else. And so your body, your liver just keeps shutting everything to lipids. All right, the other thing with this, and I don't know if I mentioned it in the lecture or not, it's kind of weird lecturing in here and then go importing it and then doing it again, so I never remember what all I said, is your liver can only get up to, your book talks about it, and I think the number is roughly 5% by mass, glycogen. There is a maximum capacity of glycogen. For some reason, because in the master plan of humans, they did not ponder that we would become the lipogenesis machines that we've become. That was like a backup. So when we went into times of starvation, but glycogen, you can only store so much, and then you start storing it as lipids. You could also, and this would be like somebody who's running and exercise, everything's in perfect balance, the glucose could go into glycolysis too. This is going to be a very small amount. I'm going to put it in parentheses because you are taking in glucose. So if you're running like a marathon, or like when I've gone on long bike rides, 2-4 hours, yeah, your body's going to be using the glucose. It's going to be using up the glycogen, and it does switch into lipids. But it does, as you take something in, it will use it as energy. So glycolysis is our source of ATP. All right. You also will get some protein synthesis. So I'll put that up there. But so protein synthesis also. Insulin wants your body to store. We're storing. So that's what this is in parentheses. We should make this like a little dot, 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 dot. It doesn't turn that off because that we always need some energy. All right, that's the first one. Its counterpart is glucagon. Glucagon is also released by the pancreas when you have low blood sugar. So when low blood glucose. Your pancreas is on the other side, the other rib cage. So the right side is your liver, and the left side is your pancreas. It's right there next to your stomach and spleen, and it's releasing all the hormones we need for digestion. It's in charge of all of this. It's a balance between these two. They're not released at the same time. So what happens, how Americans eat now, where people eat every 2 hours. These wonderful, like, nutritionists tell you, yes, every 2 hours. And you're always ringing the dinner bell. You're always ringing the dinner bell. You're always ringing the dinner bell. This never gets released. It is a balance. You have to have a turn-off time. That's the whole idea of intermittent fasting, that we should only be eating about 8 hours a day, which is not that bad. So some people, it's starting at 9 or 10. Maybe it's 10 or 12 hours a day. But that you need at least a 12-hour time period, and they're really saying it's more like a 16-hour time period where you're not eating, so that insulin goes down. We've been possibly looking at the whole insulin thing wrong. A thought is in type 2 diabetes, again, that your body is protecting yourself, because when you get really high insulin, things don't go so well. Anyway, just a thought. There's lots of stuff actually out there on YouTube now, and they're talking about that. It is with extra credit. It's the doctor who's been doing research, and it's a really awesome extra credit. I encourage you all to do it. All right, so glucagon is going to do the opposite. It's saying, oh, it basically goes to the liver. So it's traveling from the pancreas over here to the liver. So it goes from the pancreas, release, and it travels to the liver. And it says to the liver, release, open the floodgates, release the glucose. It's saying, hey, let's do this. So your liver releases the glucose. So this is catabolic. These were anabolic. So this is, we're going to store. This is, we're going to release the glucose. So we're going to break down the glycogen. So you actually write the whole word glycogen. You put an O, and then you say lysis. So we're going to break it down. So we see this whole piece here, glycogen, and then lysis. We're breaking it down, glycogen to glucose. And again, the liver can remove the phosphate, the glucose gets released into the bloodstream, everybody's happy. All right, oh, there's another way we can make glucose. There is. Does anybody remember? It is that funky word, gluco, which means glucose, so glyco can mean any sugar. But here, glycogen, but this is gluco, and then neo. So that neo is key. And then genesis. So this is making glucose not from carbohydrates. So not breaking down glycogen, not breaking down starches in your food. This is new glucose. So this is making new glucose. Like nobody's ever seen this before in nature. It's a brand new glucose molecule. It's not a glucose that came from your food and then got stored as glycogen and then it's getting broken down. So we're making it new. We can make it from, remember the lactate that happens in glycolysis? I have a slide that I've already talked about. So lactate, certain amino acids, and then glycerol. Remember glycerol from the fatty acid backbone? So we have a couple different ways. This is the big boy there it's saying. But that's interesting. We're going to make it from amino acids. We're going to break, where are those amino acids in your body? Your big muscles. Those big muscles are actually storage to make glucose. Why do we need this process? Well, a couple reasons. One, there's certain places in your body that can only use glucose. A big one is your red blood cells, so RBC. So red blood cells. They have no mitochondria. They can only use glucose. So that's one. One of them is the cornea of your eye, and one, it must be anaerobic, I'm trying to remember, but the back of your eye just doesn't get enough blood supply, and so it's going to need some way to make glucose. But your red blood cells is the biggest one. And if I think of it as we're going through this, I'll add that back in there. All right. So 3 and 4 are stress. When you're stressed, Tigger shows up and you're like, ah, it's Tigger. Some people are afraid of Tigger. You shouldn't be. Tigger's so sweet. But you have stress, whether it's real or imaginary. Hopefully I'm not freaking anybody out. None of you have a Tigger fear? Okay. You are going to release epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline. You got to get away from Tigger. Or, you know what's even better? Maybe you're not afraid of Tigger, but you're going to bounce like Tigger. And so maybe you are Tigger, and some huge saber-toothed tiger comes up, and you got to giggle and jiggle away with Tigger, which means you need energy. So we need energy. Oh, we're running out of ink. We're running out of board space. We need energy, which means we need ATP to run for 2 hours. We need ATP. So how do you get ATP? You're going to break down glycogen. Well, we're going to break down glucose, so glycolysis. You can keep running. You can be out of breath. Glycolysis will keep happening. You're going to make ATP. But you really don't have time to stop and eat unless you learn how to become friends with that saber-toothed tiger. So you're going to need more glucose, and so you're going to just break down the glycogen. So the glycogenolysis is going to release the glucose, and then the glucose is going to go through glycolysis, and you've got energy. Oh, I don't know if I talked about it because of this interesting environment. But your supply of glycogen. Let's go back up here. If you're just sitting at home playing video games, watching your teacher be a goofball, it lasts about 2 days if you don't eat. So if you didn't eat for the next 2 days, the first 12 hours is the hardest because you have to get past the mental thing. But yeah, the brain is just overconsumes us, right? But you have a 2-day supply before you switch to other food. I get to this slide later on in the slideshow. But if you're exercising, so this is if you're at rest. But if you're exercising, so you're running from the saber-toothed tiger, bouncing like Tigger, bouncy, 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 right? Fun, 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 fun. You got about 2 hours. So we'll just say you're Tigger, T-I-double-G-R. You all know how to spell Tigger, right? Right. And if you don't, and you really don't know who Tigger is, you really need to find that out because you need to start letting that inner child out. All right. So you just ran for 2 hours. You've just run out of your supply of glycogen, and you didn't have time to stop because Tigger is still bouncing. He keeps going and going. I think there was one story where he keeps going. So that's why we get to step 4. I feel like I need a different color. I got green. And step 4 is anytime epinephrine is released. This is a side note real quick. In trying to make your slideshow, and I just realized I could just do this, is epinephrine also releases glucagon. And the glucagon is probably what stimulates the glycogenolysis. So epinephrine itself only directly stimulates the glycolysis, the enzymes that do glycolysis. It is that the epinephrine actually stimulates the release of glucagon by your pancreas. And then this is the big guy. It tells your body to release glycogen. Step 4 is the big one. Whenever epinephrine is released, from your adrenals. It also releases cortisol. Whether it was a real Tigger bouncing or not, whether it was an imaginary one, you've released cortisol. It takes 2 hours for cortisol to do, oh, perfect timing. 2 hours. We were made as these very precise. It's really fascinating. All right, so it takes 2 hours because this is a steroid alert. It goes into the nucleus. Yeah, it travels from your adrenals. Anybody want to guess where it travels? It goes to your liver and it binds the DNA in the liver, and it tells the DNA, oh heck, we're going to run out of glycogen. There's not going to be any more glycogen. You better get those other enzymes going to make glucose some other way. Gluconeogenesis. New glucose, but it wasn't really Tigger. Did anybody, I can't wait to find out. I'm so hopeful at least one of you did the giggle, jiggle, and wiggle. I'm going to do it as an extra credit for my other class this summer. And actually, I know some of them, I kind of told them about it last night, and they were already giggling and jiggling. So I don't know, though. They might say that now, and then when the time comes to giggle, jiggle, and wiggle. But maybe we should do it as another extra credit for the final for somebody who needs it. You gotta do the giggle until you jiggle and wiggle. Isn't that so fun? I'm hoping you've all been there at some point. Like, we should do that every day and then make somebody else. That's one of the most blessed things here. So we're gonna start breaking down our muscles. Those big muscles, those bouncing muscles. We're breaking them down. But we didn't need them because we weren't actually bouncing and jiggling and wiggling and giggling with Tigger. We just got stressed. And this is steroid. It's in its little boat. It doesn't go backwards. It's a one-way deal. There's no reverse. And we're breaking down proteins, those muscle proteins, and we're making glucose. So certain amino acids are, can we see? Oh yeah, I'm still on the screen. Become glucose, and you didn't actually need any glucose because you've been eating every 2 hours. Because, oh wait, the media created some fear recently, didn't they? About 2 months ago, and everybody went and started hoarding, and now you have like all these bags of stuff that you need to do something with, and you didn't really need the glucose. And so it's going to go into lipids, lipogenesis. You're going to actually start storing lipids. And the liver is doing this, and it just keeps storing it around the belly, around the liver. And that's those people, you know, who have that belly just in this area. So the movie Super Size Me, yeah, that's an amazing movie. I haven't seen the second one that came out a couple years ago or a year ago or something, but that was the thing that happened. He gained weight. He gained it really fast. If you watch that first movie this term, the one with the sugar film or something like that, that was the guy from Australia, and he gained a lot of weight, and it was all in his waistline, like increased like 5 inches or something, and yeah, and they get worried because his liver, because this is all happening in the liver, and so they're really worried. And so remember, Tigger's about to leave to say goodbye. Be kind to your liver. All right. Namaste. Or ta-ta for now. That's what Tigger said. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
All right. I apologize, my hands are white. Actually, interestingly, did my telomere. I've been doing every one of them. And so I did a service for 3 hours this morning, which was painting. So just, right, so insulin, when we have high blood glucose after we eat, our pancreas releases insulin. It tells our liver to store, to take in the glucose. Insulin is the hormone. It never enters the cell. Insulin tells the cell, glucose is here, dinner is here. We take in the glucose and we store. So glycogenesis, lipogenesis, and actually protein synthesis. All right, when you have low blood glucose, which is down here, I keep forgetting I need this pointer. So top part is high blood glucose, lower part is when your blood glucose drops, which would be at night, you're not eating, you're sleeping, your liver is set up to not wake you up. The glucagon gets released from your pancreas, and it goes right next door to the liver and says, release the glucose. So the glycogen breaks down, is glycogenolysis. And it can also start making glucose. So that's what this one's showing, glucagon, glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis. Insulin is going to store, but it's not going to make new. Right? It's all a balance. We want to keep it in a balance. Isn't this great? The food they showed. Instead of an apple, they're showing crap food. Yeah, that's not going to make you go here. This crap food does not get stored as glycogen. It gets stored as lipids. All right, so catabolic or anabolic. Catabolic is breakdown, and that is what glucagon does. So glucagon is breaking down the glycogen. It breaks down lipids. It can, whereas insulin, sorry, we're going to go back. I have trouble with my pointer. Insulin is anabolic, so synthesis, genesis. Okay. This is the epinephrine, right? Adrenaline. It's chemistry. And when that's released from a real stress or an imaginary long-term stress, cortisol also is released from your adrenals. And, right, cortisol, real stress or imaginary stress. We are the only species that does that. Again, anytime glycogen, epinephrine says, use up the glycogen, let's run, and the glycogen gets used up, and you're gonna you need more glucose. So you start making that in your liver. Stress is all types. It can be from watching, can be real, can be eating too many cookies, it can be upset because you misunderstand somebody. That's a big one. And then you just store all that glucose. Oh, staying up late decreases your thyroid, decreases your liver's ability to detox because it's overwhelmed trying to do gluconeogenesis and then lipogenesis. It can't do what other stuff it does. If you're running around the clock, you stay up late, you decrease your immune system. Everything is being meant to make glucose. We need glucose. That's what cortisol does. It can't think. And so you suppress your immune system. CA again is cancer, but you suppress your immune system. And it shifts your pathway so you have low melatonin, low progesterone, low testosterone. And so how can we shift it back? This is a slide we did before. Exercise and have fun when you exercise. Laughter. Gosh, I have not met the Dalai Lama. I got to see him give a talk. I told you about that. And just the Tibetan monks are just can laugh and sleep. Sleep is amazing, and eat healthy. All right. Oh, and gratitude. Gratitude is key. Compassion. That is what the Buddhist monks all say they do. Sunshine, exercise, diet, and gratitude. Don't forget the gratitude. And so humans can turn on the stress response by thought alone. We're the only ones that can do that. Everything else, all other animals need something real to happen. And so you choose your thoughts. I think about flowers, choosing love, survival versus creation. All right. And again, so adrenaline causes fear, lack, control, feeling judged, right? Or when you feel love, you release oxytocin and endorphins. So is there really a choice? Choose love. Olivia wants you to choose love. Choose love. All right, we're in. And oh, wait, no, there's a few more slides. So just remember when you're stressed all the time, oh, diabetes. So there's people who are very healthy. And they're like, I don't weigh 500 pounds. Why am I diabetic? Stress will lead to diabetes because, so you've seen the maps, like there's not much going on and then suddenly everywhere is in this deep doo-doo of diabetes. And this is the crazy part. We're not the worst. It's affluent countries. I don't know my Middle Eastern countries, but some of you do because you've been there. Brazil, again, a country of affluence. So they call it the Black Death of the 21st century instead of bubonic plague, fleas, and rats and bats. It is high fat and high calorie diets. And yes, I dare say animal based. I'm not saying you can't eat animals. Well, I would like to be able to say that. But you don't need to eat it like you have been. The high blood glucose is just the effect. Again, have we been looking at it incorrectly? Is the decrease in insulin, yes, type 1 and type 2 are different, but type 2 can lead to type 1, but why are we looking at it wrong? And again, it's the media is so wonderful, aren't they? So intramyocellular lipid, I mentioned this, second slideshow, means myo is muscle. This is lipids inside your muscles, and they are getting in there and they are gumming up the insulin receptor. It'd be like your door key. You still use a key to get in your door. You just put gum in there. You can't use the key anymore. Insulin's the key that has to fit in there, and it can't. And yeah, it's lipids that are high fat, high calorie diets, and high animal-based diet. You got to decrease the animals in your diet, decrease the fat. Yeah, so you have a choice. Fruits and vegetables, nuts, Mother Nature, or the low-carb, gluten-free diet. You're going to get to do another recipe, but this time you're taking one of your favorite recipes and you're going to change it and see if you can do it on your own. You might need help, but see what you can do. This book, I actually have not read the book, Forks Over Knives. Conversation I had with somebody the other night in office hours, I just wanted to mention again, I cannot recommend this book enough, How Not to Die. I do not read books from cover to cover. I do get them eventually read. I turn to the section I'm interested in, and he has done a phenomenal job. So you want me to keep going? Or stop here? This is a nice stop place. All right, so I'm gonna stop recording and make a second video, or you guys can all just take a break, pause me, and you can come back because we got about another hour to go. Is that good? You want me to stop? All right. So we're gonna we looked at carb metabolism. We're gonna look at fat metabolism. This is another one of those crazy slide pictures that I did not make, but yeah, lipids are needed. Do you guys remember all the lipid functions in our body? There are cell membranes. We got insulation going on over here. So reading from the left to the right, support surrounding our vital organs, helping to keep temperature. Yeah, and we use them for energy. Their big thing is our energy reserve, and they build our tissues. So the fatty acid spiral, it is a spiral, and it is aerobic. It is completely dependent on the ETC. If you look at this, and I'm going to do a little talk on it in the next slide. This is what it is. This is also in another language because I often like their slides better than the ones in English. We're going to make the FADH2 and the NADH2, but what's coming in at the top there is a fatty acid. That R all the way over on the left just means you keep going. You can make this as long as you want. It doesn't matter if it's PUFA or MUFA or saturated. We just store it as saturated, our body, because it's just the simplest thing to do. This is just an overview of, just to remind you, so it is completely aerobic. It is going to come down to TCC, is what I was calling the TCA, is how I learned it, the tricarboxylic acid cycle, which is the Krebs cycle. So we're going to break down the fatty acids to that acetyl-CoA. Oh, and then we can store them. All right. Yeah. Carbs and amino acids also get broken down to acetyl-CoA. And then we can store them as cholesterol and fats. There's no arrow going back to them, is there? Yeah. Excess of anything will get stored as cholesterol. All right. So here we go again.
All right. Taker's back. And we're going to talk about fatty acid catabolism, or the fatty acid spiral, also known as beta oxidation. I don't know what happened to alpha, but it's known as beta oxidation because we're going to oxidize. You all remember what oxidation means? And they all said, well, he's not a lion, but he is a cat. So he is going to, yeah, we can make an acronym up for Tigger, Leo. So we're going to lose electrons. All right, so we're going to, let's do this. We have the spiral. The idea is you start with your fatty acid. And the first step is we have to activate. So when we talk about glycolysis, we had to activate it, which means we invest. Activate means we're going to invest. And we're going to invest for the fatty acid to get activated, an ATP becomes an AMP. And hoping you all know what that means. It lost 2 phosphates. So when the ATP, the triphosphate, becomes the monophosphate, that is the same as an investment of 2 ATPs because it lost 2 phosphates. All right, this only happens once, and then we're in the spiral. All right, so then every time it goes through the spiral, this is not a cycle. It keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Every time it goes through this, you get 1 FADH2. Keep going, and every time you go through it, you get an NADH. This is the whole idea of the fatty acids getting oxidized. It's giving up its electrons because FADH2 and NADH, so this would be an NAD. Been having a lot of trouble with these markers, so hopefully, I'm sure hoping you can read this. I don't have to videotape again. So the FAD becomes FADH2 and NAD becomes NADH. So every time we go through this, we get 1 FADH2 and 1 NADH. And they have to go to the ETC. And what happens at the end here, we don't lose CO2, is a 2-carbon group comes off. Do you remember what those 2 carbon groups were called? They were acetates, or acetyls. So the YL just means it's attached to something, and it's going to be attached to coenzyme A. In fact, the coenzyme A, remember coenzyme A? Coenzyme A was a transporter of 2 carbon groups. It's also what transports the fatty acid here. So, let's get another color. We're going to hope for the best. Oh, look at that. They have one. I picked the right one. This is going to go to the Krebs cycle. also known as the citric acid cycle. The NADH and the FADH2, they can skip the Krebs cycle because that was the whole purpose of the Krebs cycle. They go straight to the ETC. Now, we haven't gotten any ATPs yet, but let's say we start, we'll do a simple one. Let's say we start with 8 carbon fatty acids. It went through the spiral, 2 carbons came off. Oh, we still have a 6 carbon. And it goes through again, and we get another FADH2, and another NADH, and another 2 carbon group. And so we'll put another 2 carbon group, and another NADH, and another FADH2. And let's see if we have another color. We can use up all the colors that are running out. All right, so now we're at 4 carbon. So we had 2 carbon cut off, we had 6, another 2 carbon came off. So now this goes around again, and we get another FADH2. And the NADH, oh, another NADH. Oh, and another 2 carbon group comes off. And I'm really sad that I picked 8 carbons because I have a whole bunch of pens I haven't used. And we're left with, I do I have a red? Do I have a red? Yes, I have a red. I have a purple, but it has no purple left. All right, so now we have a 2 carbon group. Oh, what's going to happen to that 2 carbon group? It doesn't go through the spiral. Because the whole point of everything is to make a 2 carbon group. All right, so the last time when it cuts, you get a 2 carbon and it just goes out here. It doesn't go around again. So we don't get to keep spiraling. All right, we're going to do some math. You ready? Let's do it with the blue one because that was a nice dark color. So, by the way, before I forget, this all takes place in, oh, do you know what I'm drawing? Yes, in the mitochondria. We are already in the mitochondria. And that is why this is aerobic. We haven't made any ATPs yet. We are completely dependent on the ETC. And the ETC is completely dependent on oxygen. So it's all about those electrons, and oxygen is pulling everything through. So we're in here. We're in the matrix. Because why not? We've been there all term, and it looks like we're going to continue to be there. All right. So we're in the matrix. These are already there. We don't have to pay a fee to get into the mitochondria. So let's go through the math. You ready? We're going to do it for a bigger one. I'm trying to think. Let's do 12 carbons. Or we can do it for the 8 carbon. We'll do it for 8 carbons. That's fine. So we did it for 8 carbons. So first you have to invest. So we invest is a negative 2 ATPs. And then we get how many FADH2s out? Well, we got 3 FADH2s. And they go to the ETC. And each one of them starts passing its electrons along. And hydrogens get pumped out into the space. Lots of hydrogens, lots of hydrogens, lots of hydrogens. And then they come back in and we make ATPs. So every FADH2 can make, we're going to go with my math, which is the math in the book, because I know some of you do read the book because you've commented. So 1.5 ATPs. So we will get 4.5. All right. We also got 3 NADHs, which also go right there to the ETC. These NADHs and FADH2s are already in there, and they're each worth 2.5. Again, well, you're not going to do this math in any other class probably. These numbers are slightly different in different books because the original numbers they realized were optimal and not reality. So even these numbers are fudged. So 3 times 2.5 is, 7.5 ATPs. All right. This isn't hard because you had some notes. So hopefully you're taking notes. Oh, we had one more thing. We had all these 2 carbon groups. So we started with 8, and we got 1, 2, 3. Oh, we have that one. So we have 4 2 carbon groups. The 2 carbon groups came from your food. Specifically, that became a fatty acid. And these 2 carbon groups are going to go to the Krebs cycle. And they go through the Krebs, and they become more NADHs and more FADH2s, and they go into the ETC, and they do the thing where the electrons pass along, and the hydrogens pump out, and the hydrogens come down the slide, and they turn the turbine, and we make ATPs. Every 2 carbon group is worth 10 ATPs. So, yeah, these numbers are ATPs. So the 1.5 is ATPs, ATPs, ATPs. So 4 times 10 is 40. All right. And we add this up and we get 50 ATPs. That's pretty good, because that's a really small fatty acid. They're usually like 16 carbons, so we actually get over 100 ATPs. Yeah, I think you do one of those in your homework. Remember, you just cut the 8 carbons to 2 carbons, and then the spiral will be 1 less than the number of 2 carbon groups. So these are the spirals. And somebody will say, Dr. Sherpa, I add that up and I get 52. Remember, we invested. All right. I want to compare it. Of course I do. So this is why. This is why your body stores everything as fats. This, by the way, is catabolism. So this is, nobody says this, but lipolysis. So again, that lysis means we're breaking down, and lipo means lipid. So this is catabolic. We're breaking down, which means we're making ATPs. Catabolic makes ATPs. We have energy. This is why when you read bars that tell you how much calories there are, which is total BS, it's somebody's belief system. They want it to sound smart. And you take nutrition and you all get caught up in that. And that's wonderful. That's your belief system. But actually, it's not true. But it is why on those, we'll pretend like it's true. And I'll pretend like it's true. You also still think it's true. I did for 50-some years. And then Tigger enlightened me. I kind of feel like I have to fill in the heart. All right. Thank you for humoring me, especially all the males. The girls were all probably thinking the same thing. Kind of feel like we have to do this heart too, on this acid. You guys are like, oh my gosh, she's totally lost it. Okay, so this makes much more ATPs than carbohydrates. A glucose is actually bigger than this. So glucose has 6 carbons, but the size of it for mass is actually larger. And the glucose only gives us around 30 ATPs. So when your body has extra, it's going to store it the most efficient way possible, which is as a fatty acid. And so you might remember, we drew zigzags when we drew fatty acids, and then we did the acid down here, and that was it. There was only the oxygens at the end. Oh, I made 10, so we would actually get even more. There, I can erase 2 of them off. So there's, the carbon has we'll say few oxygens. So it has a higher oxidative potential. So it has a higher oxidation number. It's a higher oxidation state. It hasn't reacted with oxygen, so it's oxidative potential. If we look at a glucose, let me erase. We're going to compare it to glucose. So we're going to take a chance. My glue is going to keep working. You guys remember drawing glucose? It's just like all the term coming back together. And we had that CH2OH. Oh yeah, you do that. Because you're going to be drawing nucleic acids on this midterm. All right, in every position, well, let's put it up because we're doing beta, right? Remember? Beta's up in the sky and down and down. Oh, I'm sorry. This one's down. One of them is up. Doesn't matter. All right. This one I think was up. That's glucose. The point is there's an oxygen in every position. You get C6H12O6. Every carbon has an oxygen. Down there, every carbon, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 8. But we only have 2 oxygens. And what's even crazier is if we get to like 16 carbons, we still only have 2 oxygens. So you don't have all the oxygens. They haven't already been greedy. This guy's already given up some of its electrons to that oxygen. And those oxygens, so we're not going to get the same potential out of it. So your body is smart and says, hey, let's store it as fat. This is part of what that whole fat is of eating high fat. You want to eat whole food. But let's go through the math with the glucose, just because I'm here. And we'll do it just to compare it to that. All right. Let's see how the red's going to show up. So glucose. Glucose is going to go through glycolysis. Glycolysis, again, happened in the cytosol. We are not in the mitochondria yet. And glycolysis gave us 2 ATPs, 2 NADHs, and 2 pyruvates. Which are 3 carbon groups. So 2 times 3 makes that. Makes sense. These ATPs we use immediately in our math. These NADHs, they have to go into the mitochondria. And when they go into the mitochondria, they have to pay a fee. Very interesting. So there's a boat that has to take them into the matrix, because that's where they have to be. And that little boat, he says, you got to give me a little bit of your electrons. He doesn't take all of them, but he's a little bit greedy. So basically, they become 2 FADH2s. Now, the thing that's very interesting, this fascinates me. There is one type of cell in your body, one organ in your body, where the boat is free. The guy who's going to row this NADH across into the center of mitochondria says, sure, of course. Everybody does everything in this one place in your body. This is for real. I'm not making this up. I know a lot of you are like, this lady's totally crazy, but I just have to get through this class. Your heart. It has a free boat. So your heart actually has a greater ATP potential than your muscles. Your muscles are really greedy. They keep everything for themselves. All right. And we're going to come back. So these 2 FADH2s are each worth 1.5. So we now have 3 more ATPs. So this is in the ETC, right? All right, these pyruvates go through, it's actually called in some places now pyruvate oxidation, but in all the old texts, it had no name. And so I called it the step with no name. But this is the step where it becomes a 2-carbon group, which then goes through the Krebs cycle. So Krebs in ETC. I know this math is messy. You're all like, but you keep reminding me, and then make it really neat. All right, each of these is worth 10 ATPs. So we're now 2 carbon, sorry, we get 2 carbon groups, each worth 10. So our math there, oh, that's good, 20 ATPs. I got 50. We got 4 2 carbon groups over there. And that was a really small fatty acid. Your body stores them as 16, 18, 20. Your body is really efficient. That's why all excess Your body just stores it as fat because it says this is the best way to store it. There is more, and that is in this step. You get an NADH for every pyruvate, and this step is in the mitochondria. So you do get 2 NADHs, each worth 2.5 in the ETC for the ATP. So this is worth 5 more ATPs. This step, at this point on, glycolysis is the only step on the board that I have talked about here that is anaerobic, that will happen if your oxygen supply is not adequate. So glycolysis means anaerobic. We talked about that. Anaerobic respiration is a way to get rid of NADHs, because that was something I apologize. Oh yeah, right there. That we have to get rid of these guys, right? That was the whole purpose of anaerobic. But we have enough oxygen here, so we're going to assume everything's great. All right, if we add this up, 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 5 more is 10, plus 20 more, we get 30. My understanding is it's actually closer to that. I don't really care about the number so much. What I care is that's always more. And that is why it is stored as fat. All right. So Leo Gur, these guys gained, so they're Gurring like Leo. Does Leo Gur? This is not Leo. All right, until next time, bye.
All right, you can ponder if Tigger gurs. So what if you had no food? Really, what if you had no food? What if your hoarding paid off, but then there was no food? So this is a picture that Joey and I are looking at right now above my computer. That is Joey's dad, Pimba, on top of Mount Everest. And so that's, yeah, holding the Nepalese flag. And there are 4 situations where your body really does run out of food. But when you climb Mount Everest, when you do excessive extreme exercise like climbing Mount Everest, your body is going to go through these steps to get food, because you got to keep going, because he kept going. So first you use up the glycogen. Glycogen is broken down to glucose. Your muscles keep going for themselves, because that glucose has a phosphate on it, can't cross. But the liver removes the phosphate, and so it shares all of its the glucose that breaks down. But you have a limited supply. What's the name of this step? Glycogen lysis, the breakdown of glycogen. All right, your red blood cells need glucose. What's your red blood cells doing? They're bringing oxygen to everything. So even when you're anaerobic, your red blood cells, you gotta have some oxygen coming around. All right, red blood cells need their glucose. They're always anaerobic. So you've used up your glycogen. What's gonna happen next? You have to make more glucose, because your red blood cells need glucose. Even when you're on top of Mount Everest and there's no oxygen, your red blood cells are still trying to find oxygen to bring around. Right? So the glucose, they're at 25%, right? Their pressure is at 25% the pressure we are here. Imagine that. It's so gluconeogenesis, we're changing amino acids, the lactic acid, which is truly lactate that has built up in the muscles from the muscles breaking down its glycogen. That got recycled back to the liver, and it also makes that back into glucose. So some of this is now going on, and you're going to be using it, and your fats get mobilized. So it takes about 3 to 5 days for that to happen. The first, depending on how long it takes for you to deplete your glycogen, under 2 days, under 2 hours for Pimba there, and you start breaking down your proteins. You're breaking down your muscles as you're using them, and you're breaking them down to make food for your body, and then your fats get mobilized. And then your fats get changed into ketone bodies. You all have heard of ketosis because it's all over the news. It's such a wonderful fad, isn't it? Oh, ketones are acidic. They numb your brain. Well, that's a good thing. You don't know you're starving. That's actually what they're meant for. They actually have a switch in the brain that they turn off so you don't know you're hungry. And so excessive exercise. So not a marathon. Marathon's excessive exercise. This is the ultra marathons, like from Death Valley to the top of Mount Whitney, 126-mile marathons. Actual starvation, like in parts of our world where they don't have enough food. Oh, the low carb diets, ketosis. This is when you go into ketosis, excessive exercise at one time, like days, non-starve, no food, starvation, either because you have no food or anorexia, where people choose to. I had a student who actually shared her story in her paper and talked about what happens in anorexia and in uncontrolled diabetes. So when you truly have uncontrolled diabetes, you have glucose, you're taking food in, so they might still be eating, but the food can't get in the cells because the insulin can't bind the receptors. So either you don't have enough insulin, which is in type 1 diabetes, or the insulin is there, but the receptor is gummed up with all the crap that you've been eating. All right. So that was the dude, Dr. Atkins. The diet actually, he plagiarized it. It does have a medicinal use, which is childhood epilepsy. And so there is a clinic. There used to be at Providence. I would assume it's still there. It's an extremely strict diet. It only works with children. Most parents cannot comply with it, but if they do, the childhood epilepsy goes away. It trips the brain, and if they can keep themselves truly in ketosis. So it is not called ketosis, by the way. That's just the abbreviation. It's like triglycerides. They're triacylglycerides. It is ketoacidosis. So it comes from your fats. Your fatty acids will eventually, after several days, get changed into ketones. It's pretty crazy. People now buy keto strips and they will check to see if they're truly in ketosis. Do you know what they're measuring? They're measuring the pH of their blood. They're acidic. Oh yeah, I have that slide again in case you forgot about it. But it is, your body is able to revert and start using ketones. You are making glucose from your muscles, but your body does start saying, we need food somehow. All right. The paleo diet was a high protein diet, and it put people into kidney failure after a couple years, and it went out of fashion. And so now we're in the keto diet, which is the high fat diet, which was the Atkins diet, which was in fashion 15 years ago, and then it went out of fashion because people were not well. Yeah, so the paleo diet, this is the joke about the paleo diet. And a couple of things with the paleo diet, if cavemen really ate like that, they also only lived to be about 40, maybe. So is that really what you would want to do? So some myths about the keto diet. They call it ketosis. So the keto diet means we're eating high fat. And so the liver is going to start producing. Yes, I forgot to mention that. The liver, it is your liver. So when you eat highly processed bread, not like real bread made with love that you're paying for. When you pay 50 cents for bread, you're going to have your body is going to react. You're going to, insulin tells your body to store. You're eating all the time. You just keep eating. This is going to happen. And so there are ideas in the keto diet, we don't let you have any glucose, none. You can't have carbs at all to truly have this happen. Oh, but we're in that place of what happens over time, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So that is not a ketosis because there's all those carbs, but this is what most people think that they're doing when they're on the keto diet, that they can eat the highly processed meat and they're still getting carbs. This is what we're meant to eat, is vegetables. Yeah, we're gonna move on. You can, these are your 3 ketones. Acetone. Yeah, acetone. Yeah, fingernail polish remover is what is being produced in your body. That is why any of you who are medics, you know, you smell the breath and you can tell when people have uncontrolled diabetes because they smell like fingernail polish remover. And this is just a wonderful slide that I plagiarized because I just couldn't believe they actually said this. Don't confuse diabetic ketoacidosis with nutritional ketosis. So it's the same molecules. How comes they're not acidic anymore? Yeah, they kind of left a word out in nutritional ketoacidosis. All right. So anytime we go in acidosis, it's not good. You can, yeah, acidosis sends your body. It's your body. This is the big thing. That's your acidic blood. That's alkaline blood. Meats and highly processed food. Soft drinks, highly processed food, shows up there several times. Fruits and vegetables make it alkaline. Oh, and by the way, if you're eating meats and sugar and not eating anything that has fiber, you're not going to poop. In fact, when the Atkins diet, before it became like something else, now it's called the keto diet, it's had several names over the decades. One of the things they did in the study, they were looking at several different diets. They looked at how often people have a bowel movement. And it is like once a week. It's really not pretty. Yeah, you want acidic blood, eat like that. Here's another one. This is flipped though. The acidic blood is on the right side. Look at that immune cell. Should we talk about low immunity? We all want to keep our immunity high. Yeah, it's summer, it's warm out, it's wonderful. Vitamin D keeps your immunity high, but also keeping your blood alkaline. Oh, and cancer cells can only grow in acidic. So by the way, so I talked about this weeks ago. Acidic means 7.2 pH as far as your blood. We can only live in a small range of pH. So alkaline is 7.4. It's a really small range. Cancer cells cannot live in alkaline blood. You've got to be eating vegetables and fruits and legumes are so important. And the real whole grains. And it's not that we want to kill these cancer cells. We want to give them a chance to become healthy because everyone can change. All is forgiven and everything can go how it's meant to be. So what do you think? Really? You want your kids growing up on, and it doesn't, you know, I'm not perfect. I've never been perfect. I don't like donuts. That's a good thing. And I love broccoli. But when you have children, yeah, help them. And even if you weren't perfect one day, say, hey, okay, now I know, and I'm going to set an example. When I get invited to that first barbecue, I'm going to bring something healthy for people for a change. Joey and I in our church group, it's really fun. We have potlucks once a month, which we haven't had, but I got to see them today because that's what my service project was. We went and helped somebody at their home painting, and they started bringing healthier food for me and Joey because we couldn't eat any of the food anybody brought. And so, I don't know, you can influence, and neither of us said anything. I just said, well, I don't eat that. Right. All right. So let's talk about protein. When do we use protein for energy? Oh, so I made this slide, this part of the slideshow in the fall term, and this would have been at the end. So it was like 2 weeks before Christmas. And I found that picture. Yeah, everybody's big into the protein drink. You can't get enough? True or false? Oh, a bunch of you watch Game Changers. I recommend it for all of you. It's a game changer. You've all had to watch that one movie. You are what you eat. So if you don't take in food, your glucose stores are low. You have 2 different types of amino acids. Some of them will become ketones and some will go through gluconeogenesis to make glucose. So you can go online. You don't need to know this step, but there were those 20 amino acids, and so your proteins start breaking down. Your muscles, not your enzymes, your muscles start breaking down. That's your big storage place of amino acids. And There are some that make glucose. This is gluconeogenesis. And then there are amino acids. This is great. Look at that food. Yeah, that's not a potluck at my house. So, yeah, so these certain amino acids will produce ketones. Your brain and your muscles will metabolize these ketones when there's low blood glucose. Also, your heart and your kidney can switch over. Not all of your cells can switch over to ketones, but some can. And then your liver can change some other things, your amino acids. That was the previous slide, gluconeogenesis. All right, and this is when you eat. Yeah, so some of the things that happen when you're in ketosis, you have bad breath. You also don't sleep very well. People don't mention that. People are always just saying, I don't sleep well. You think your diet's related to that? It does decrease your appetite, so you start eating less. Oh, let's talk about the microbiome. Have I ever mentioned this? Pretty sure. The microbiota, right? Over half the cells in your body, in your gut, if you're eating that crap, your microbiota is not the same as mine. And you're acidic. So the big problem with amino acids is they have nitrogen. They have a nitrogen. That is huge. The step up here that says transamination, and I was trying to find my pointer, but that means we're trying to remove the amino, the nitrogen. The only place this can happen in your body is the urea cycle, your kidneys. There you go. If you've never seen a picture, there you go. The healthy kidney, you've all seen the heart one. This is your kidneys on a high protein diet, on the American diet. Watch Game Changers if you have not. World-class athletes have all switched to not that crazy high protein. By the way, protein from plant sources doesn't cause that same thing. Foods that heal your kidneys, so they look like this. Oh, notice they are all, hey, John, there's your garlic and onions. Anyway, cranberries, oh, cherries, it's cherry season. So exciting. High protein diet. My slides have changed. Acidifies the blood. So pulls calcium out of your bones, osteoporosis, fractures, arthritis, cancer cells love it. You get more exposure to toxins, antibiotics. Animals are treated horribly, degenerative diseases. Can't recommend that book enough. He has, the next book is called Whole, and he has a book that's coming out this fall. I can't remember the name, but in that, that's the 17-fold increase in heart disease in people with a high protein diet, which was the average American. Double what is recommended, double. And your kidneys just cannot handle it. And you also are constipated, and you go into ketosis. And there's Mama Earth. She's crying because she can't survive on a high protein diet. She is just, you know, look at her. She's gorgeous. She's giving you what, well, we're not going to eat that greenery, but broccoli and stuff. She's saying, please eat my food that I'm providing. Oh, and what if you eat excess calories? When you eat excess calories, when you're an American and we have high energy sources, we're malnourished because we eat the wrong food. Amino acids, when you have more than your body needs to make into protein, they are stored as fat. They don't go into your muscles. They get stored as fat. Yeah. Is it really that cute and delicious? You can ponder. That is not photoshopped. All right. I highly recommend that you Google intermittent fasting. You know, in terms, you're in your last 2 weeks. I know you're all really busy, but look into it. It's fascinating. It doesn't mean you gorge for the 8 hours you're eating, but usually we talk about it quite a bit during the class, but this is an unusual circumstance. So they're saying here you eat starting at noon where the fork is, and this one they're doing a 5-hour day. Joey, I have actually done that last spring. I did it. For me as a female, it was hard for me to get enough food in because I felt bloated all the time. So I try to do 8 hours. It's often more like 10 hours, but I can tell a difference. And your microbiota, can't emphasize that enough. There's some awesome TED Talks that's saying 12 minutes or 15 minutes. You can watch them on your own. There is a connection between your microbiome and your brain. Your microbiome wants fiber, and they actually thrive on intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting allows your insulin cycle to rest and reset. Reminder, yeah, our immune system is really important. We've talked about it. The media talks about it. It determines your response and recovery to cancer, inflammation, and wellness. Oh, common cold is what kind of virus? The coronavirus, I think it's called. And longevity. It's a symbiotic relationship. They are good guys. They are our friends. They actually make our vitamins. They make your vitamins for you. You change your gut by changing your diet. Fiber. They want fiber. They love nuts. You can't eat too many nuts, though. Cranberries, pomegranates, just. All right, fiber. Eat a rainbow every day. Yeah. So, what have you learned? Are you still eating that? You still, look at that cute little mouse. He's so cute, but he's really stressed. Or are you going to have this amazing, yeah. And when you exercise, just be goofy and have fun. Do you really have to break a 4-minute mile? All right, Joey does. Sleep beautifully, and laugh. Giggle until you wiggle and jiggle. Eat to live, not living to eat. All right, I think that's it. And namaste. I have to hit escape. All right, there'll be one more, which is your lab 9. I'll be recording a video for you to watch, or a lecture for you to watch, and then write comments on. So good night and have a beautiful weekend.